Okay, very good. Thank you. So, good morning, everyone. It's always a pleasure to see familiar faces when we start a session like this, and founder members as well. So it's a great honor to have you all on board this morning. It's a series of sessions that we conduct to support social workers, newly qualified social workers, or social worker who is trying to register with Social Work England here in the UK or aspiring social work career. With some introductory sections so that they are aware of what is social work look like in the UK. That's the purpose of these sessions. So as you all know, UK MSW Forum was established in 2013. I stand to be corrected if that's the wrong date or year. So with an objective to support social workers or those who are aspiring social work career in the UK from Kerala to get an understanding of how the system works, what the role of a social worker is, and what kind of career pathway they can undertake in the UK. So we're proud to say that over the last 10 years, we've been able to support a lot of social workers from Kerala, not just from Kerala, a lot of social workers from Indian origin, to get into a social work career, sustain in that role, and make progress in their career paths. So it's not an easy job. It wasn't, and people like Tom Chetan and Martin will testify that, because we had great trouble in getting into the profession, even though we had a lot of experience and back home. So that's the reason why we thought we need to support those who wanted to have a career in social work in the UK. So from this year, we started to have introductory sessions, not from this year, this last year onwards. We conducted social work introductory sessions covering the whole of social work structure and also different roles within it, like children's, adult, mental health, and things like that. So this section today is going to look at what is adult social care. We're going to look, the assessment in adult social care going to look like. What is the role of a social worker is, and what kind of template of or documentation they use. So it's an opportunity for you to understand. And if you ask questions, we've got two very experienced social workers to lead the session today. And we also have got other experienced social workers or to managers and things who are participating, so we'll be able to support as well. So we've got Araminda George, who is an adult social worker, and I'm proud to say that she's a first generation social worker from India who really qualified in the UK, got into a role. Now, so she's there to lead the session, supported by Mr. Martin Chaku, who is the team manager for the adult social care team in the UK. So I'm very honored to have them both on this session. And also, as I mentioned before, we've got a couple of very experienced people as well in this forum. So even though they are not facilitating, they will be, I hope they will be able to join us and support the sessions as it goes through. So I would like to welcome you all and pass the mic back to Araminda and Martin to take the session. Before we start, I know Sheena is there anything that in terms of etiquette, Zoom etiquette, anything want to mention? Yeah, thank you.
Please. Those who want the CP, it's been recorded and displayed in the YouTube. Please kindly note that people who are entering join with their correct name in order to get any kind of certificates. We only issue certificates once used with the verification of the participant list, and also we need to mention that you need to mention that you are in the correct name. Sorry, I'm just looking at the people who is admitting it at the same time. Sorry. So make sure you are put on the correct name on it, and also just make sure that your camera is on, and unmute your mic if you want to ask any questions. And during the session, please mute your camera. Many thanks. Thank you.
Thanks, Sheena. So, morning, everyone. So, as Bijun really nicely explained, myself and Martin will be sort of co-presenting on the topic of adult social care assessments. So, this is really just meant to give you an overview of the sort of common types of assessments you will do as sort of like an adult social care practitioner, and sort of give you an idea of how you go about undertaking these assessments in practice. So Sheena, if you don't mind just putting up the presentation for me, so we can just go through. Can everyone see that okay? Yeah? Okay, that's good.
Yes.
Brilliant. So if we could go to the next slide, Sheena. Thank you. So I thought it would be good just to start off with a really brief activity just to kind of engage you all into this session. So in the chat box, you can write down your answers. What do you think an assessment means? You know, what comes to your mind when you think about an assessment? So there's no right or wrong answer here. It's just to see what you perceive as an assessment. Okay, just as a starter activity. So if you could put that in the chat box, or alternatively, you can shout it out if that helps. Yeah, I'll give you guys a couple of minutes. Getting some answers, so that's really good. Yeah, collecting relevant information about clients, trying to understand the needs that they have to be met. Yeah, it's really good. Anything else that anyone wants to add? Assessments would mean their emotional, mental health, and gauging their social surroundings to provide care that needs to be met. Yeah, it's really good. Oh. Getting information about clients, psychosocial background. Yep, so it's that gathering of the information. To identify care needs of an individual from their perspective. Yeah, so seeing them as the expert of their lives. Understanding the care and support needs to protect and safeguard. Yes, thank you so much. That's really important. Assessment in brief is process to assess the client's current situation and their needs for further support and treatment. Yeah, that's exactly it. So I think that's it in terms of sort of the chats that's come up and the answers for that. So that's really good, guys. I think you have, you know, a really good understanding already of what an assessment looks like. So Sheena, if you could go on the next slide, and I can sort of say about the ideas that came to my mind when I thought of an assessment. So these are just some of the ideas, like I said, that comes to my mind when I think of an assessment. So it involves, like everyone said on the chat here, the gathering of information. So that can be from multiple sources, for example, the individual, the family, other professionals. It's an empowering and outcome-focused intervention. So you should be focusing on the outcomes that the individual wants to achieve, and it's about empowering them, especially in adult social care, to maximize their independence. It's a person-centered sort of process, so it's involving the person as much as possible in the assessment and decision-making process. Involves determining eligibility of support, so we'll go through that in a little bit more detail later on about sort of eligibility of support for adults. And really, just like everyone said, a discussion with individuals or advocate or their advocate to help understand their situation and needs better. Sheena, if you could go on the next slide for me. So this is more of a detailed and more of a comprehensive description of what an assessment is. Don't worry about writing everything down. We will issue, obviously, this presentation to those who've attended this session, and you can email that for your request as well. So I'll go through this really quickly. So an assessment is a process which involves collecting and analysing information about people with the aim of understanding their situation and determining recommendations for any further professional intervention. Assessments provide a comprehensive understanding of the client's needs, their strengths, and how that can be used to develop an effective plan of action to help them reach their goals. By using assessment, social workers can help improve communication, outcomes, and quality of life for their clients. Involves, like we said, gathering of information from multiple sources, including the family, individual, other professionals, and other community resources. Next slide, please, Sheena. So these are sort of common types of assessments that will come up in sort of adult social care, and some of them are sort of the Care Act assessment, carers assessment, supported self-assessment, mental capacity assessment, and the risk assessment. So the care needs assessment, carers assessment, and supported self-assessment, they all come under the 2014 legislation. So these are the main sort of assessments that we'll be covering in today's presentation. Okay. So Sheena, next slide. So the Care Act 2014 needs assessment. So this is one of the most common and primary assessments you'll be expected to do as part of your role or responsibility as an adult social worker. According to Section 9 of the Care Act 2014, local authorities have a duty to carry out an assessment of anyone who appears to have needs for care and support, regardless of whether those needs are likely to be eligible. Okay. The assessment should focus on the person needs and how it impacts their well-being and the outcomes they want to achieve. It should involve the person in the assessment and, where appropriate, their carer and or someone else that they nominate. The assessment should provide access to an independent advocate to support the person's involvement in the assessment if required. It should consider other things besides care services and can contribute to the desired outcomes. So, for example, that can be preventative services, community support, voluntary or charity organisational support. An assessment under the Care Act 2014 legislation is a critical intervention. It gives you an opportunity to support an individual with an appearance of a need, to understand their needs and how that may be affecting their ability to achieve their personal outcomes. So really, it's also an opportunity to help them understand their own strengths and those of the community around them, and how those strengths can help achieve their personal outcomes. So if we think about a care needs assessment, really an assessment entails that semi-structured conversation between you as the assessor and the individual, and is based on what we call a meaningful relationship, which seeks to support the individual to meet their desired outcomes. Next slide, please, Sheena. So, according to Section 13 of the Care Act 2014, there is a national eligibility criteria. This must be followed to determine if an individual has eligible needs for care and or support. So an eligibility determination can only be made on the basis of an assessment of needs. And when you're determining eligibility, local authorities must consider whether all three conditions are met. So if you're supporting an adult, these are the three conditions. The adult's needs arise from or are related to a physical or mental impairment or illness. As a result of the adult's needs, the adult is unable to achieve two or more of the specified outcomes. And as a consequence, there is or is likely to be a significant impact on the adult's well-being. So on the right-hand side, I've listed all the sort of specified outcomes under the Care Act 2014, which you'll be expected to ask questions about during your assessment. So I won't read it out all now, but it includes things like managing and maintaining nutrition, managing and maintaining sort of personal hygiene, toileting needs, being appropriately clothed, maintaining a habitable home environment, etc. So under the Care Act legislation, an adult is to be regarded as being unable to achieve an outcome if the adult is unable to achieve it without assistance, is able to achieve it without assistance, but doing so causes the adult significant pain, distress, or anxiety, is able to achieve it without assistance, but doing so endangers or is likely to endanger the health or safety of the adult or of others, or is able to achieve it without assistance, but takes significantly longer than would normally be expected to. So this is the sort of eligibility criteria for an adult, and for a carer, there will be a separate eligibility criteria. Okay. Sheena, if you don't mind, if you could go on to the next slide for me. Thank you. So when you're preparing for a care needs assessment, there is a couple of things that you need to be mindful and you should be doing as part of that preparatory sort of support for that assessment visit. So some of them being, you need to read through the initial referral form or the previous information that you hold about the individual and their circumstances. Okay, so that's to sort of give you a better idea of what is their situation now, what are they going through, what appears to be the presenting needs. Yeah, consider what you need to know about the individual to fully understand them, so their life, their priorities. Think about the additional issues or obstacles you can foresee and think about how you would address them. Ensure that during the assessment process, so before, during, or after the meeting, you get input from any professionals involved in the individual's life as appropriate. This is to kind of give you a holistic understanding of the person's needs. So think about the potential support available to meet an individual's needs, but don't have an answer or solution in your head until you have completed that assessment process. The reason I say that is because when you get your initial referral form, it will highlight the presenting needs and challenges. And when you go out there and do your assessment, you may come across different needs and the situation may be completely different. An example of that is that recently I went out to do a Care Act assessment visit, and on the initial referral, it was highlighting about how the individual, they needed to go into respite. The main carer was not managing the individual's needs. So I went out there, completed my Care Act assessment visit. Actually, they didn't need that support at all because they had a lot of community support in the background to support with their well-being and support the carer with ensuring they continue with their caring role. So that was not needed. So, have some, ideas in your mind as to sort of what kind of support you could potentially offer that person, but just bear in mind that what potentially a referral form could say could be completely different to when you go out there and do your assessment visit. Yeah. So next one's Sheena, if that's okay. So undertaking the care needs assessment. So when you're undertaking it, encourage and enable the individual to take lead in the assessment because they're considered the expert of their life. Right? Have a conversation using strengths-based open questions. Demonstrate active listening to find out what is important to the individual and why, and what is it that they want to achieve through that assessment. Understand from the individual's perspective how their presenting needs prevent them from achieving their desired outcomes. Support the individual to understand how their current set of strengths and the networks of support can be used to develop or enable them to achieve their desired outcomes. And ensure you collate as much information following your assessment visit from other professionals. It is really useful, I will say that, at the end of your assessment, just to summarize what they've said to you and what you've said to them, so that you both have a clear understanding as to what's been said and what is the next plan of action. Okay, so if we could go on to the next slide, please. So what we're going to do now, we're going to go through an example Care Act form. So this was published openly to the public, and it's just to give you an idea of the questions and the information you should be collating during your assessment visit. So if we look at the first page, on that screen, it asks for basic personal information about the individual and the accommodation details. So you could be asking questions like, are they living alone? Are they living with family? Are they under a social housing provider? Sometimes this information is really important as during to your assessment visit to collect, especially regarding whether the individual owns their property or not, because later on, if you're trying to move that person out of their property into a care home, you would need to know as to whether they own their property or not to be able to, for that to take into account into their financial assessment calculations. Okay. So then we move on to the second part about the support that is available for the individual during their assessment. So under the Care Act 2014, local authorities must arrange an independent advocate to facilitate the involvement of a person if the person has substantial difficulties in being fully involved in these processes and they have no one appropriate available to support. So most of the time, family, friends, or neighbours would be available to support, but in a circumstance where there isn't, then you need to consider if an independent advocate is needed. Okay. With regards to if a person has power of attorney available, for those who may not know what a power of attorney is, it's a person who has legal authority to make decisions on your behalf regarding either your welfare or finances, or in both aspects as well. Okay, so it's important that you get their views as well, and they're included in majority of the processes, and make sure you get evidence of documentation of the power of attorney. So they should have that in some sort of paper copy, or you could alternatively approach the Office of Public Guardian for those who issues these, just to check whether they are the power of attorney for this individual. Okay, so next slide, please, Sheena. So moving on to the next page, which looks at the Care Act outcomes. So you'll be asking questions based on the Care Act outcomes to identify the individual's needs. Okay, so if we look at them a section at a time, and I can give you some ideas as to the questions that you could potentially be asking during your assessment visit. Okay, so if we look at support networks and resources to start off with, you could be asking, who are the main support networks for this individual? Is it a family member? Is it a neighbour? Is the person able to go out into the community independently and attend appointments on their own? If not, who takes them? What are the resources do they have? For example, is there a charity or a community organisation involved to support them? Do they need transport to get around in the community? Okay. Go into relationships. Who is important in the person's life? Who is involved in their life? Does the person need support maintaining contact with family or friends? And then we go on to caring for others. So do they have any caring responsibilities? So do they care for a child sort of under the age of 18? Do they care for an adult as well, or even pets? So those are the sort of questions you should be asking for that. Looking after your home. Are they able to complete household tasks independently? Do they struggle with this? Who supports them with this? Is there any hazards or risks within that environment? Are they able to easily evacuate the home in an emergency? So in some situations where there are concerns around hoarding, it isn't so easy for the person to leave the property in sort of the case of a fire. So those are the kind of risks that you should be documenting there as well. Okay. Managing your money. Ask them how they're managing their everyday finances, such as paying their bills, personal budgeting. Are they getting the benefits and support that they need with regards to this? Do they have any concept of the value of money? When we come down to shopping, eating, and drinking, is the person able to complete food shopping independently? Are they getting any support with this? Are they able to cook for themselves? Can they eat and drink independently? Do they have any sort of specialized equipment or some sort of staff assistance? Is there any risks or concerns with the eating and swallowing and drinking side of things? Yeah. Personal hygiene. Can they independently get washed, dressed, and go to the toilet? What support do they need with regards to this? Is there any equipment or technology they use? Yeah. And then finally, moving around and being safe at your home. Can they mobilize around the home independently? Can they transfer on their own? Do they have equipment? Do they need any equipment? Does a referral need to be put in, for example, to an occupational therapist for them to come out and assess for necessary equipment? So these are the questions you should be asking when you go out and complete the needs assessment. And you should also be identifying risks and considering that at the stage whether you need to progress onto completing a mental capacity assessment, potentially raising a safeguarding if they've disclosed any safeguarding concerns, or even looking at getting some sort of occupational therapy involvement. Okay, we'll go on the next slide, Sheena. Finally, so it gives a bit of an outline of how you come to a decision as to whether someone meets the criteria, okay, for care and support. So you should be thinking about agreeing a plan of action with the service user at the point of assessment and thinking about suitable interventions to meet the individual's needs to add to the professional summary and or recommendation section. Okay, so at the end of the assessment, you should be thinking about what are the potential support that I should be offering this individual to meet their needs. Should this be care at home? Have you discussed this with them? Should you be considering assistive living or extra care housing? Or do you have concerns with regards to this person's capacity and are they unsafe at home? Do they need to be moved? Those are the things that you should be adding to your professional summary and recommendations. So the next plan of action, okay? If we could go, okay, so I'll now be handing over to Martin, okay, just to add on to what's been said about the Care Act assessment. Over to you, Martin.
Thank you very much, Araminda. You have covered almost everything that is appropriate to be shared and with the newly qualified and aspiring social workers who may be working or aspiring to be working in the UK social work area. I'm looking at another angle, just as you know, the social services in the UK is a registered professional, regulated professional, which is if you want to work as a professional social worker, we need to make ourselves ensure that we are registered with the Social Work England, which is a regulatory body for the social work area. And this is a highly a profession which is valued very much, but has an element of pressure in terms of how we do the work and the pace of the work. How quickly do we need to do it? How proactively do we need to intervene and make and progress in various steps of our job in the work and the job of a social worker career. And say in a team, whatever be the team, there are different teams of social work. Okay, there may be children's team, there may be adult services, there may be hospital discharge services, there may be mental health services, there may be disability, community disability services in terms of the nature and style of social work or teams. So there will be hundreds of referrals waiting to be allocated, and depending on a priority of the need and the presenting situations, the management of the team make a decision to allocate the case to a specified social worker. When case is allocated, as a qualified social worker, your role is to actually make an assessment of the needs of the person or to review the package of care which is already in place. So you may, as Araminda rightly pointed out, okay, you may have to look at the available records on the system to see what has been the case, what information do we hold now, and what are we going to achieve, what we plan to achieve. So in order to achieve that, okay, we make a contact with either with the referrer or with the service user in order to say, okay, we have got a referral and I am your allocated social worker, either for the purpose of a new care assessment or for the purpose of the review. And check with them if they are happy for the social worker to have a conversation, whether it is online, virtually, or by face-to-face, depending on what is quite appropriate in the given situation. So what I try to say is, we need to achieve the consent of the person in order to actually carry out a care need assessment or to have a review of the package of care. So for that, yes, Aravinda rightly mentioned about strength-based practice. We need to focus on what are the strengths of the person or the service user. What are the available support system they have in place, which enables them to actually continue to meet their needs. What can actually make a difference in terms of putting something in an extra if the person who is supporting is unable to actually continue to support or to provide the same level of support that they are presently giving. Okay, and as a part of the assessment, we should also be looking at the options of technology, because our role is to actually enable the independence or promote the independence of the service user and enable the family as well to do the job better in terms of the caring role. So question is, can any technological options can be offered in order to allow the person to actually meet their needs better in order to promote their independence or to support them to enable them to continue to live in their own houses or homes. So in terms of the technical options, they can keep pendant alarms, which actually use somebody wears around their neck or on the wrist, or even can be tied up to the waist. So suppose, I don't think we have a system like that back in our place in Kerala or in India. If I am at risk of falls, or if I need some urgent help, and if I fall down, okay, I can actually press on the pendant alarm, which actually triggers a call to the emergency contact or to a service center. So if my emergency contact is actually unable to actually respond to that call, automatically that call goes to the emergency service, and somebody will try to attend you to ensure you are safe and well. If you need any further support and help, they will ensure that is in place at the time. Also, if there are various sort of devices and equipments which will enable a service user in order to promote their independence and live safely at home. So pendant alarm is only one device. There are various other devices, okay, including memo minders, various sort of sensors, and other equipments like small equipments like grab rails or raised toilet seat, frame around the toilet, Zimmer frame, food trolley. These are some of the little things which can make a huge difference to elderly social work, service user or a person with disability who is struggling to meet their needs at home. And we can also discuss the situation of the person with what we say health professionals, including general practitioner. When I say general practitioner, for the people who are attending from India, it is the doctors, okay, or the community health system, or make contact with the mental health professionals is appropriate, or if we need to make a referral to the drug and alcohol service, if that is appropriate, or referral or to the occupational therapy or physiotherapy services, etc., depending on what is required for the person we are dealing with. It does not mean we have to automatically make contact with all the services. We make contact with the services. It can be in order to achieve information about a person. For example, I may have to actually make a contact to the general practitioner, the doctor, in order to understand the health issues of this person better, that I can actually support that person better. It can also be to actually make the doctor aware of a situation that I have come across after visiting, communicating with this person or the family, that the doctor may not be aware of. So there are two ways as to why we make a contact to a person or profession, whether it is a general practitioner, mental health professional, voluntary agencies, X or Y. Two ways. One is to make a referral, other one is to gather information in order to support our assessment of the need. Okay, so that is one area we need to operate separately. And again, the decision, whatever we make for the service user, with the service user, we should be actually able to defend the decision. What I try to say is, all the decision the social worker makes should be a defensible decision. I should be able to defend my decision, my recommendation, to say as to why I make that recommendation. I make a recommendation because of this situation. I make another recommendation because of this recommendation. I mean, this situation. So there should be a genuine reason that I should be able to defend myself to say unjustified. This is why I recommend this. This is why I recommend this. Okay. So 2 areas. One is strength-based practice. Other one is defensible decision making. And again, okay, as we said, okay, we complete the holistic assessment with the service user and the family or X or Y people involved in the care and support of the person. Well, and we decide that this particular person actually meets Care Act eligibility in order to achieve care and support from the local authority. Okay, that is for the purpose of the Care Act eligibility as per the Care Act 2014. But that does not necessarily mean that the assessing local authority how to actually provide a material support system in place. Okay, our role is to actually ensure what can make a difference to the life of the person we are assessing. So it can be the matter that if I make a referral to a doctor, some of the things the person is experiencing can be dealt by the doctor. So I don't have to do anything as a social worker, but I make a referral to make sure that particular needs is met. I can make a referral to a voluntary agencies, okay, because they may be better placed to actually support this person. And that voluntary agency, for example, I will say, an agency that works with drug, alcohol services. And locally in the place where I am, it is we are with you. So I make a referral to that agency that they can actually support this person better. And the local authority do not have to actually provide a material service in that situation. I may make a referral to the occupational therapy because, or the physiotherapy, because they may be able to get the right appropriate support deemed very appropriate to the person, which means the local authority do not have to provide a separate service in the land. So what I try to say is, even if the person X is eligible, meets the eligibility for the Care Act purpose, it does not mean that the local authority have a right or duty to actually provide service. As long as there is provision which is available elsewhere in order to actually meet the needs of the person. Okay, that is one element. Next element. It can also be the case, okay, we make referrals or we can also signpost the person to various services. So some people some service users may be able to communicate with others, liaise with others, and they may be socially active. So we don't have to actually work for them or act for them. So if they are physically, mentally stable, able to communicate, let them communicate. That also a measure in order to promote and sustain their independence. So what I try to say is you don't always have to make referrals unless it is appropriate for you to do. If the person is able to make a referral, let them do it themselves. That also enables their independence, promotes their well-being as well. Okay, next one. There may be the family members or other persons, including neighbors or friends or whoever else, who may be actually involved in a person's care and support requirement. They may be supporting the person X, the service user, with their personal care maybe, or maybe with shopping, or with managing their finances, or taking them to social activities, etc. So if a person is actually involved in supporting that service user, the client, then if we come across, when we become aware that there is a person who is supporting, we also need to actually offer a carer's assessment to that carer, informal carer, who is actually providing informal support to that person. That is a statutory requirement. So as Araminda mentioned earlier, every person is service user client is eligible for a Care Act assessment. At the same time, if a person is identified as an informal carer supporting this client, that informal carer is also entitled, eligible for an assessment in their own right. So In some local authorities, that carers assessment is completed by the social work team or the social work professional. In some local authorities, that may be a contracted service, which will be carried out by another set of professionals based elsewhere in the system or contracted by the local authority. Either way, we need to make a referral, and we need to find out when we actually have that conversation about the character eligibility as well as assessing the needs of the person. We need to check with the informal carer to say, there is something like a carer assessment. Would you be happy for me to actually refer you to that service, so that your situation can be assessed and they can try to see if there is any way they can actually provide you with any support to enable you to continue to care, to continue in your caring role. Okay, so if carer's assessment is accepted by the informal carer, we make a referral. Or if that assessment is completed by your own team, you complete that assessment yourself. Okay, there may be situations where the person may be actually unable to actually involved in the assessment process, and there may not be a family member available or a friend available to actually support in the system, in the process. So we have to offer a independent advocate in order to be represent the service user in the assessment process, as well as in planning for the job, planning for the necessary support. Okay, these are some of the little things we actually keep in mind as to what we do with the assessment process. And Sheena did go through with you 10 domains that is working as part of the assessment form or the process in assessing the eligibility needs of the person. And the questions are, what we need to consider is, for example, if we are looking at the personal care domain, are there any eligible needs for this person in relating to the section? If yes, okay, what would you like to achieve? Outcome we are trying to achieve, okay? And what are the unmet needs? Okay, for some people, there may be some support already available through the family, informal carer, or the neighbor, or X or Y person. Okay, and if there are needs already met, what are they? Are the informal carer willing and able to continue with the caring role? If the informal carer is willing and able to continue with the caring role, we don't have to actually put in the service there also. And if you say the informal carer is unable to actually continue with the support they are able to provide, or they may not be actually able to continue with the same level of support they used to provide because of change in their life situation, so we may have to actually explore what can actually support the person to actually manage their care needs or to promote their independence. And are there, if that is the case, do we think there is a reablement potential to this person? What do we mean by reablement potential? Well, just for the sake of an example, I will say, okay, I had an accident. Okay, I am an adult. I had an accident which seriously affected my ability to function as a person. For example, okay, I am unable to actually mobilize myself independently, which affects my ability to actually manage my personal care, or to dress, or to have a shower, or to have a bath, or to go to shops, or to eat myself. Eat. I need some support to eat, etc. So there may be some situations where a short-term care provision or intervention can actually that will enable me to actually regain some of my potential. For example, okay, if I get some support, for example, okay, 2-time calls daily for somebody to help me in order to manage my personal care, including getting out of bed, support me with my personal hygiene area, help me to shower, help me to wash, dress, etc., or to prepare my meals, help me to feed, etc. After a short period of time, with the due support and input from the health and other therapists, etc., I may be actually able to do these things myself. Okay, so we are talking about the short-term support system in place as a temporary measure until I am able to regain my potential to function independently as a person. Yeah, and if that is the case, we don't have to actually look for a long-term permanent provision of service. So that can be a short-term provision, which is short-term, which is for a maximum of 6 weeks usually, and that may be funded by the health budget, but that commissioned through the local authority. Okay, so you don't have to worry about the budget there, but what I try to say is whether there is any reablement potential for the service user or the client in order to meet their needs to be independent in their life situations. So that is one area. And one of the other things we need to keep in mind with regard to the assessment process is we will find that, okay, some people may be living under very risky situations. Okay, it may be due to self-neglect. It can be due to their own unwise decision. It can be due to their surroundings. But as a social worker, you always try to promote positive risk-taking. If the person is actually able to make a decision and makes decision with full understanding of the situation, we expect that person to bear the consequences of their action. Okay, we are not there to force a person to enforce them to take my decision as a social worker. If the person thinks differently and has the choice and the ability to make the decision which he feels okay for him. So what I tried to say is there may be situations where the client or the service user may be making unwise decision. They have the choice to do that. Okay, and you don't have to worry about it. But and again, as a social worker, you should be actually enable the person to take positive risk-taking situation. And various local authorities, I hope, will have a risk enablement plan in place in order to actually make sure we have gone through the risk this person may have from the present situation. And these are the steps we adopt. These are the steps we have explored. And this is the outcome that somebody needs to achieve. Okay, it may be the case the person will say, I wish to continue in the way I am. If there are no risks to others, if there is no life-threatening risk to this person, I don't think there is any role for the social worker to say, you have to do something differently. You can make recommendations, you can give them suggestions. End of the day, the decision maker will be the person himself. And they have the choice to write unwise decision. And those people who are attending from India, I hope mainly, the types of services we provide as a result of social work assessment or care assessment, maybe like home care services or domiciliary care services, which means we may be able to offer support at home to enable the person to support the person live independently in their own houses. It can be one-time daily call. It can be twice daily call. It can be 3-time daily calls. It can be 4-time daily calls maximum. That is what my understanding is. It is not automatic. It depends on the level of needs of the person identified at the time of the care assessment. And another care provision that is available is respite care or short-term care, which means I mentioned about the existence of an informal carer who may be supporting the person in order to meet their needs. So if the informal carer wishes to have a break from the caring role, that will enable them to continue to help support the person independently for long, then we can actually put in a short-term care provision that will enable the informal carer to have a break from their caring role. So that is what is meant by respite. It can be a care provision at home. It can be a care provision in a care setting, whether it's a residential or nursing or whatever care setting. And then there is also daycare, which means if the person actually, the individual, the service user, the client, whatever the terminology we use, if they say, okay, I am feeling socially isolated, I don't have any family members or anybody visiting me, I feel very depressed, I don't have any opportunity to go out myself. Okay, we may be able to actually offer a daycare provision for that person to attend a daycare provision elsewhere in order to be with a group of people and spend the day with them, engage in communication if they are able to, or in some group activities if they are able to do that, and then they come back end of the day. Some services may have support transport attached to that. Sometimes it may be something the service users will have to arrange themselves depending on what each local authority may have. And then residential care or nursing care. By residential care, we mean, okay, as a local authority social worker, all the local authorities actually try to support the people, the person, the service user, the client, to enable them to live in their own houses. Okay, and that is what 99% of the service users wishes to happen. They don't want to, most of the people do not actually want to go into live in a care setting, a long-term residential or nursing setting. And the local authority will be trying to put in the sufficient level of care if that is appropriate to actually meet the needs of the persons in their own houses. But there may be some situations where with a maximum home care package or domiciliary care package, the person's present care needs cannot be met because of the huge significant change in their care needs, which means they may be needing 24-hour care support. Okay, maybe to do with prompting with certain things, maybe to give reassurance because of the anxiety sort of levels, or maybe because they need 24-hour nursing care provision. So there can be two types of residential care provisions in a care home setting. One is residential, other one is nursing. Nursing placement is usually for people who requires frequent care and support from a trained nurse. If a person does not actually require frequent support from a trained registered nurse, then it may be the case that their care needs can be met in a residential setting, where you may not have got access to, you don't have access to the trained nurse, but it will be the carers who will be able to support them with their personal care, meals, medication, social activities, etc. Okay, and in terms of the types of care, residential care or nursing care, there can be different categories. For example, okay, older person care, residential care or nursing care, or it can be residential care for the people with dementia, or it can be nursing care for people with dementia. It may be a residential care or nursing care for people with mental health. Okay, these are some of the categories of care system in place in order to support this person to meet their needs. One of the other things.
Martin, you've went
Hello,
on
Martin.
mute.
Sorry, I'm back. So you complete the assessment, you come back, you discuss the needs of the person with the person or the family members. What we need to be aware of ourselves is there is no free service provided by the local authorities. Okay, whatever the local authorities provide is there is a cost behind it. There is no free service, which means, so you may be asking, okay, how do they understand what they need to pay? Every service user who has got more than 23,250 in their earnings, savings, investment, shares, bond, etc., they will need to pay a service user's contribution. If the money they have is above this 23,250, then the cost of the care will be wholly made by the person, or is expected to be wholly made by the person. If the money they have in terms of earnings, saving, investment, shares, bond, etc., is less than 23,250, they need to have a financial assessment in order to determine what is the level of their weekly contribution. And so when we come back and from the assessment, we actually have to make a referral to trigger a financial assessment. And at the time of the assessment process, we also need to inform the service user or the family, if appropriate, to say there is a charge behind the services we propose or we recommend. And always remember, we don't actually give a guarantee of service when we actually go and assess. We may be able to discuss to say, this may be the potential options which may help you, whether you're happy to explore that. Okay, but we don't actually give a guarantee because different local authorities will have different systems in place. Okay, I as a frontline social worker go out, complete an assessment, I come back to the office, or if I may be working remotely or mobile working, soon after I come back, I actually put a note in the case note of the person, records to say, I had an assessment, this is what we discussed, okay, to discuss the charging policy, this is the proposed plan, or this is what referrals I am going to make, which means, okay, that if I am out from the office tomorrow due to an unexpected situation, somebody, if the department gets a call or the team gets a call regarding the person, they can actually know and understand what been discussed in my assessment and what is going to be the plan. So always, soon after you come back to the office, so soon after you are back in your system, always try to remember to put in a case note to say, I had the care assessment completed with a person in the presence of family member X or Y attending. And this is what we discussed, and this is what the plan is. And then you actually move on to the writing up of the assessment. Okay, when you write up the assessment, you have, Araminda has rightly taken you through the form. So you write up the assessment, and there will be systems in place for in the teams you work to say, when you complete the assessment, it needs to be assigned to X or Y person or trace or whatever it is. And they actually scrutinize your assessment, and they will need to, they will have the option to either to agree to your assessment and your proposals or recommendations. They can decline the assessment if they feel, okay, something significant has been missed out, or that it does not make sense, or if they require something, you to actually explore something else before something else is done. Okay, so an assessment completed does not necessarily mean it will be approved by the scrutiny system in place. So they can ask for more information, they can decline this assessment, and they can approve it. Okay, that is a part of the process. And going back to the financial situation, with regard to the care home placement and the care home care systems, every local authority will have a standard weekly rate. Okay, when they actually make arrangement for a person to be in a 24-hour care system, residential or nursing care. And there may be some homes which do not accept that local authority rate, weekly rate. So what needs to happen is, if that person is consisting to say, I would like to stay in that particular home, or I want to live in that particular home, but they do not accept the local authority rate, which means the difference between what is usually agreed by the local authority to that care home and what is expected to be paid for the service users, the difference between these two components needs to be met by a third party in order to make sure the care home has the right amount of money as they expect. Okay, if there is no third party available from the family or informal carer or whoever involved with the person, then there may be some options available to explore from, for example, for if the person has been ex-serviceman, when I say somebody who has been working in the military or defense services, Navy, etc., there may be voluntary agencies working for them who may be actually able to make some third-party contribution in those levels. Okay, if there are no provisions available in order to actually make up that third-party contribution, so what happens? So we may have to actually tell them gently, politely to say, unfortunately, we are not able to actually support you to live in that particular home because there is a funding gap. Okay, but there are homes, other homes which are able to meet your needs, and we are happy to ensure a place for you in that particular home. Okay, and one of the other things from experience, what I would try to say is, there may be some care homes which may present itself very, what we say, spacious, great to look at, well organized from outset. That may not necessarily mean they actually provide a gold standard care in there, because some of the modern homes, because as you know, the care is provided by individual people. Okay, it may have a great scenery to look at. It may have a wide corridor. That may not necessarily mean they actually provide a great level of care. I'm not saying that they will not provide. Okay, so a thing to actually consider whether when we make a placement, what is appropriate to meet the need of the person. Okay, there may be some situation we may have to, when we come across the threshold situation, somebody may be self-funding for the care for many years. And when the finances hit the national threshold of 23,250, they can actually ask for an assessment. We complete the assessment. If we feel the person has got sufficient needs to be in 24-hour care provision, we need to make arrangement for that person to continue to live in 24-hour care provision. And again, if the person has been actually paying the care home where that person is, do not accept the local authority rate. And if there is no provision for somebody to actually top up that situation, then we may have to think about whether this person needs to be in that particular home in order to meet his care needs, or are there any homes that will be able to meet his needs, okay, with standard rate that the local authority can offer. Okay, so that is one of the other things we will need to consider in terms of the process practice areas as we work as social worker with the CARE Act assessment as well as other areas. I think I will stop now. I think I will open up the floor for the participants to actually ask any questions that we can try to explore.
Feel free to raise your hand or put it in the chat. Either way, we'll try and answer your questions as best as possible.
Sorry to interrupt. Martin Chaku, we are unable to see your face on the video. Sorry.
I'm back.
Nice to see you.
Just quickly, actually, it was a wonderful session, to be honest. And it's not just for the new people. It is even for people who are practicing. It's a very good reminder what you have done and what you have presented, to be honest. Really well done. And thanks to the executive committee, especially Martin and Araminda and Viju and everyone else in organizing this one. Just to add, actually, to what Araminda and Martin has said, I don't know if I missed it or not, that everyone has a right to have an assessment in UK, a social care assessment under the CARE Act. So if we receive a referral, we are bound to do the assessment, but that doesn't mean that we have to provide a service. The provision of service is very much linked to the eligibility needs, actually. That's why when we record, we have to very clearly record the eligible needs, especially if we are not going to provide a service for someone. If they challenge, we should be able to refer back with the eligibility needs and link that when we deal with them, especially when we have to respond to them. And our legal team will be asking for that, just adding up to what they said. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you for adding that. Yes, Tommy, you've had your hand raised up.
Thank you very much. Just wanted to give a big compliment, because I imagine when I was a team manager in adult social care for 3 years, predominantly out of my 20 years, 17 years I was in children's social care with the different roles. What a beautiful presentation, especially Araminda, and the way you presented, and Martin complimented being a team manager. Amazing. That's my compliment. Then I know there's some of the terminology the participants may not understand. Even I understand because I worked in children's social care, but the presentation was excellent. So two things maybe, I don't know anybody feel like that. For example, you mentioned, Araminda, about some legal term, court of protection and power of attorney. So I think they may need some more explanation what exactly the legal context and why it is important in adult social care assessment and care and support planning. So that's only my suggestion. And I think it will be a real wealth of information in the handout, which I'm really pleased to hear from the management committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tommy.
Thank you, Tommy. Thank you. I think really it's just to give, a really brief overview to start off with what it is. But like you said, I think in the upcoming sessions as well, we'll consider, taking into more sort of information-wise as to what power of attorney does and the legal context behind it as well. So you're right to saying that. Thank you.
I mean, we have a plan to actually have other sessions like mental capacity for
more specific ones, yeah.
Dedicated sessions for mental capacity, which will actually cover those areas in detail.
Thank you, Martin. That will be really good.
Any other questions?
Please raise your hands or put it in the chat box if you have any further questions related to the presentation. Many thanks.
If there are no other questions, I think we will move on to the next section. We may not be able to complete all of the presentations, details available in the presentation, but we can actually move on to the Mental Capacity Act.
1 second.
If there are no questions.
Aishwarya here from Gujarat. I posted my question in the chat box. Unlike India, I'm unsure how you identify people who need the care assessment. Like, I know you've said it multiple times that everyone deserves to, have like a care assessment done. But then how do you identify people who really are in need, like especially adults?
Is it Martin, Araminda answering?
Yeah. So usually before the sort of referral comes in, I'm assuming most teams would have like a front door or a sort of what we call from RT a social healthcare team, where they would collate all these referrals and see if these people potentially have needs before allocating that to your specific team. And I think if you go back to our eligibility criteria, obviously those are 3 conditions, and until you've went out and done the assessment, you wouldn't exactly be able to know as to whether they've met those 3 conditions for them to sort of continue to have that care and support from the council. Martin, I don't know whether you wanted to add anything to that.
Sorry, I did not hear what you said because I was trying to respond to Sheena. No problem. What I tried to say is, okay, if I am in need of some support, I can make a referral to the local authority, or somebody else on my behalf can make a contact to the local authority. And there will be a centralized contact number in order to make that contact. In the local authority where I am, it is called Care Connect. And there is a contact number which will be published on the website of the local authority. So, and again, it may be appearing on various other leaflets and information avenues. And so anybody can make a referral on behalf of myself. Mostly we will expect that referral is made with the consent of the person. For example, okay, if a referral is made for me on my behalf, the local authority will expect, okay, they have discussed the situation with me to say they are making a referral for me with the local authority. Okay. However, when we actually get the case allocated, we actually make contact with the referrer as well as the person himself. For example, in my case, okay, it's me. Okay, to check and confirm the referral, they are consenting to the referral as well as to have that assessment completed for them.
Martin, can I just add, you well explained from my experience being an adult social care manager. Anybody can make, you mentioned. So children can make a referral for their parents. A neighbor can make a referral for a next door neighbor who they think there is care and support. Mostly the referrals are being received from family doctors, GP, general practitioner, police department, housing department, hospital, if somebody is admitted in a hospital due to an illness or a disability or an accident. It's a responsibility of the hospital social work team to make that referral accepted. So anybody can, safeguarding is everybody's business. For example, if a vulnerable adult, because of their age, disability, or any illness, anybody can make a referral. So we call it safeguarding and protecting vulnerable adults. It's everybody's business. But as Martin rightly said, consent for referral is necessary. So I cannot simply make a referral to my neighbor without telling. Only exemption, if it is a safeguarding matter, we can refer without consent. Safeguarding means physical abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse, sexual abuse, neglect. These are some of the common safeguarding. Then consent is not necessary.
Yeah,
I
thank you,
have a
Tommy. Yeah.
follow-up question, if that's all right. Like you mentioned, it's the care assessment happens via referral. So what if the adult who needs the assessment comes to you directly? Like, is it possible for the adult to come to you by himself or herself to like make the assessment, or is it only possible via referrals?
So they
So
could
the-
either self-refer in or someone else can refer in. It doesn't have, it doesn't have to be someone else doing it on their behalf. They can
Hmm.
self-refer in for an assessment, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I think there's another question on the chat. Who would be doing the financial assessment of the service user? So usually during your assessment, you would, like Martin said, speak to them, identify if they're above the threshold or below the threshold, what kind of savings or assets they have. And we would have, for us, we have a specific financial assessment team who would complete the financial assessment. Yeah, I hope that
they can
answers the question.
also the finance referral team also can refer them to benefit check, or they can complete the benefit check, because there are some benefits some of the service users or people may be entitled to, considering their disability, age, etc. So the finance team will also look into whether this person is actually receiving those benefits they may be entitled to, eligible for. If not, okay, they can signpost the person to actually apply for those benefits to be received.
Thank you. I think that's it in terms of questions. I think we'll move along a little bit quickly only because I'm quite wary of time. So Shane, if we could go on to the next slide. The next slide was about carers assessment, and we did have a video on that. So we could quickly run through it. So it's only a 2-minute video, so hopefully it shouldn't take too much time, okay?
Hi, Araminda, are you able to see the
Yeah, I
presentation?
can see the presentation. Just on the next slide, there's the link, Sheena. It's only 2 minutes, so hopefully I think,
Please bear with me. The system is a bit slow.
yeah, that's all right.
Sorry about that.
All right. You having issues with that, Sheena, getting that up?
Sorry.
It's all right. If it's too much of an issue, it's no worries. We can always skip that. there's difficulty loading, what we'll do is will move on. Sheena, if there's difficulties with it loading, and so yeah.
I think we have covered. Okay, I think yeah, we have briefly
what
mentioned
we'll
about
do-
what is meant by KRS assessment and who is it entitled for. So that actually covers. Okay, but unfortunately, apologies, we have not been able to actually make the system work. Just carry on. Yeah.
Technical issues. So that's the YouTube link is there for you to view later on. Okay, but we'll go on to sort of like the next slides and just run through it quite quickly. Okay. So Sheena, if you could have the slides up for me again. Just on the next one for me, please. So the supported self-assessment, this is just another form of an assessment, okay, whereby local authorities should be offering an individual the opportunity to complete a supported self-assessment where they are fully in control of the assessment at a point where they can complete the assessments themselves, okay. They should use the same assessment content as used in the assessment of needs, and the local authority has a duty to ensure that this is an accurate reflection of the individual's needs. So sometimes when we do have these self-assessments come through onto our system, what I like to do is I still go out and do the care needs assessment just to ensure that is an accurate reflection of that individual's needs. Okay. So if we could move on to the next slide. So the next slide is more about the mental capacity assessment that you'll be completing, okay, as an adult social worker. I don't know whether Martin, would you be able to run through that just quite briefly for us?
Yeah, I will run through that briefly. I don't know whether I'll stick on to the notes or no, but I will carry on. Okay. So Mental Capacity Act 2005 is the base document in order to complete the mental capacity assessment, which is designed to actually empower and protect an individual who may be actually unable to make a decision. Okay. And when we say unable to make a decision, we don't actually mark anybody as lacking capacity as a permanent sort of option. It may be a temporary mental capacity and lacking capacity situations. So I think we presume every individual has capacity unless and otherwise it is proved, that they are lacking capacity. So lacking capacity is not always permanent. Some people may regain capacity after a short period of time, because they may be going through some maybe some treatment due to brain injury or something else. We'll come back to that. Okay, and again, every decision that is made is time specific, and any mental capacity assessment is time specific and decision specific. It is valid for the time it is completed, and it is valid for the specific decision that is completed. I cannot actually say Araminda lacks capacity as a blanket statement. I need to say Araminda lacks capacity in order to decide on her care and support needs, for one example. Or I need to say Araminda lacks capacity to decide where she would like to stay and live as an accommodation provision. I should be able to say Araminda lacks capacity in order to manage her finances effectively. So what I try to say is it is decision specific, and it is not general blanket sort of statement that needs to be made. And it is valid for the time it is made, and it is valid for the decision it is entitled to. And there are certain, four key principles that are actually underpins the Mental Capacity Act 2005. One is, as I mentioned earlier, assumption of capacity. Every person is assumed to have capacity. And the only exception is unless it is proved otherwise. So if I go to a service in order to complete a care assessment, the question is, what we need to remember is, if the person actually able to engage actively in that process of communication, Are they able to communicate it with me effectively? Are they able to understand me? Are they able to retain the information? Are they able to make a decision, etc.? So if we feel the person is not understanding, if we feel, okay, something is not working with this person in terms of that conversation, we need to actually complete a mental capacity assessment. I'm going back to the principle. One is acceptual capacity. That means every person is deemed to have capacity unless it is proved otherwise. Okay, we need to make every effort to encourage and support the person to make the decision. Whatever be the subject of decision that is to be made, we need to make every effort, consider all options in order to support the person to make the decision. Some people, for example, okay, the person X may not be able to communicate verbally. Okay, so we need to actually explore what other options are available in order to support, like whether it is sign language, whether it is photos, pictures, or whether it is something else, which can enable to engage that person in the communication that he understands what we are trying to communicate. Okay, next principle, the choice to make unwise decision. Okay, we as a professional may have a clear view as to what we feel will benefit to the person. At the same time, the person has the choice to make a decision that may not sit well with us through our thinking process, with our professional decision making, with our professional judgment, etc. However, as long as the person has capacity to make that decision, unwise decision, we need to respect it. We cannot say, you cannot make unwise decision. No, that is one of the principle that is saying the person has the capacity, mental capacity to make unwise decision. That also means they take the responsibility for the consequences of their unwise decision. We as a local authority professional are not bound to take the responsibility for the unwise decision taken by an individual. Okay, so fourth principle, anything done on behalf of the person who lacks capacity must be done in the best interest of the person. So if I support the person who lacks capacity in order to make a decision, it may not be a decision taken by a social worker as a professional. Okay, there may be there may be other persons, for individuals, professionals who may be involved in decision making of that person. It can be a family member, it can be a neighbor, it can be another professional like GP or mental health professional or occupational therapist or physiotherapist, okay, who may be knowing the person better. Oh, so any decision taken on behalf of the person is taken in the best interest of the person. Okay, there may be some situations where there may not be any family member, okay, and the person has capacity. Or there may be a situation where the family member, we feel there is a conflict of interest, or we feel the family member may not be actually acting in the best interest of the person. If we have got any concern in those levels, we need to actually explore the option of an independent mental capacity advocate to act on behalf of the person we are working with, so that there's an independent voice in order to represent the service user or the client, in order to support a decision-making process and to ensure whatever decision is made in the best interest of the person. Okay, so we have covered that 4 principles now. And the other thing is, okay, with regard to the test of the, what we say, mental capacity assessment, 2-stage test is there. One is whether the person is actually unable to make a decision. You can move to the next slide, Sheena. Is the person actually unable to make the decision? First question. If that is the case, okay, we move to the second question. Is it caused by any brain injury, for example, mental health problems, dementia, learning disability areas, confusion, drowsiness, ill health, substance misuse, any sort of those sort of situations actually contributing to that particular problem. So we should be actually able to make a decision based on those levels as to what is contributing to contributing to the person in order to make a decision or not being able to make a decision. And there are some of the other key areas we need to understand in terms of how we complete a mental capacity assessment. As we covered earlier, one thing to remember is whether the person is able to engage in communication, conversation. Are they able to understand what we are trying to discuss? If we are actually discussing the care needs, are they able to understand the care needs and how they are met? Are they able to understand what happens if their care needs are not met sufficiently and appropriately? Are they able to understand what happens if they are unable to actually manage their finances? Okay. So the next thing to consider is, okay, we had a conversation with them. Are they able to actually retain the content of the conversation? It doesn't mean they have to remember all of the conversation we had with them, okay, or the communication we had with them. But are they able to understand the main content of the conversation we had as to the subject matter or the decision-making area? Next thing to consider is, are they able to weigh up that particular situation that enables them to make a decision? So in terms of weighing up, there may be different options a person may be able to explore and consider in that decision making. So question is, do the person in a position to actually retain and weigh up as to what is good for them, what is not good for them, what they feel appropriate, what they feel not appropriate? Okay. And the next step in the mental capacity assessment process is, if they are able to make that weighing up process, are they able to communicate their decision? So it does not necessarily be by verbal communication. They can actually write up in a piece of paper if they do not have verbal communication. They can use the sign language. They can use the pictures to say what they're trying to communicate. So these are some of the key areas we consider as to when we complete a mental capacity assessment. Are they able to understand the subject matter, the decision we are going to make? Are they able to retain the information about what we have discussed in terms of those mental capacity assessment area? Are they weigh up the options available? Are they able to communicate? And for people who are may not be working in the social work area at the moment, we should be in a position to actually draft a few questions well in advance before we go to the service user. Okay, that we actually draft up the questions that we feel appropriate as to what the decision may be. For example, if we are going to actually assess a person's capacity with regard to managing finances, I should be looking at all possible areas as to how do you manage your finances now? Okay, how do you do your banking? Do you go to the bank in order to complete your banking process? Do you use online banking? How do you use it? Do you use it through phone or computer or laptop or for whatever? It's just to underpin the understanding of their situation. Okay. And again, do you know how much money is coming in? What benefits do they receive? Do you know what benefit, how they are spending their money? And how do they make payments? Maybe in the grocery shop or in the retail shop or something else. And are they actually able to, you can take liquid money with you when you actually complete a mental capacity assessment for finances. You can take notes, okay, cash note, to check with them their understanding, whether they are able to actually know what the currency it relates to, whether a £5 note or £10 note or £20 note, and whether are they able to add it up. Or you can also take the coins and see what that each coin represents. Are they able to add it up? appreciate, okay, some people may have sight impairment, but whether with the help of maybe magnifying glass or normal glasses, are they able to see and make a decision as to what their understanding of the situation is? And other questions to explore is there a family member or anybody else who is informally supporting the person in order to manage their finances? If there is no family member, there is no other provisions informally available, how do we actually manage this person in order to manage, support this person to manage the finances? And that is when it comes to the lasting power of attorney, water protection areas, which in order to actually support it, put in a system in place in order to support the person to manage their finances. So that is some of the key areas, but always try to include the people who may be known to the service user. As I said before, okay, family member, neighbors, friends, if they wish to be engaged in the decision-making process, it can be the doctors, it can be other professionals involved, it can be the community, mental health professional, etc. If they have a better understanding of the person who is supposed to be making a decision. So these are some of the things. I think one of the principle I may have missed earlier is least restrictive measure. I think I missed that. Okay, there are 5 principles. Then the 5th principle is whenever we actually support the person to make a decision, we adopt the least restrictive measure, that their basic rights and freedom is not compromised. Okay, I think that is some of the key areas we explore in terms of assessing the mental capacity assessment. And we are sure there will be dedicated sessions in the future that will cover mental capacity assessment, lasting power of attorney, court of protection, etc. in much more detail later. But happy to take any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Martin. What we'll do is that since we've gone over time a little bit, we've got the demonstration video of how you can undertake a mental capacity assessment. Because of time, it's only 15 minutes long. We won't be able to cover in this session, but if you put obviously your email request in sort of asking for your obviously participation certificate and so, and I'm sure the presentation will be sent to you as well along with that. Okay. And I think we will wind up. There was a section on risk assessments, but what with regards to that, what you mainly need to know is about identifying those risks and thinking about risk enablement and risk strategies, if possible, with the clients as well that you're working with. So I do have a really brief page on that, on risk assessments. But what we'll do is if we wind up, and then we can ask you guys to ask any questions that you have. Yeah, you can either put it in the chat quickly or raise your hand, and then we'll finish up. Yeah. Any questions at all?
Hi, Aishwarya here again. I just had a quick question. So when we take mental capacity assessment, I wanted to understand, we get a conclusion of how the individual is feeling, right? And like, say if the individual is feeling a little, under the radar of unable to make decisions or unable to carry out the process, daily routine basically, then why do we take the care assessment? Because shouldn't we have like a care program ready for the individual after we've taken the mental capacity assessment, or do we have to take both simultaneously to make to tailor make a program for that individual?
I'm happy to answer that if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Susan, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So may I know your name again? Sorry.
Aishwarya.
Aishwarya. Aishwarya, mental capacity assessment and care assessment, though go it in hand, is 2 separate assessment. Okay. So during the care need assessment for an adult over 16, that doesn't mean that the person may lack capacity. For example, if I had any physical injury, Okay, if I have care needs developed because of that, or I have learning disability, that doesn't mean that my capacity is in question. Okay, mental capacity would be in question when that particular individual's decision making capacity is in question. For example, you are completing an assessment for a person with moderate learning disability. Okay, there is a concern that the person is really struggling to manage their finance, and also there is a concern that the person's capacity to engage with services and where to live, for example, to be at home or supported living, is in question. Okay, that is the time mental capacity assessment comes in place. For example, in India, there is no legislation to protect someone lack capacity to take decision regarding their life. Normally, we their next of kin, like their father, mother, family members, or someone else in the community, may take a decision for them. There is no guarantee that that decision would be proportionate enough to address their best interest. So this is a legal provision where, though that person lack capacity in a particular area, their rights can be protected and the decision can be taken in their best interest. It means, as a representative of the state or government, I wouldn't be making a decision for someone who lack capacity according to whatever I want. Okay, this should be in proportionate with the law. So there is a difference. So mental capacity assessment is not a need assessment, it is a capacity assessment. And again, mental capacity assessment is subject specific and time specific. Okay, we don't conclude that the person lack capacity. The question is, in which area? Is it finance? Is it regarding choosing the care? We don't go to capacity assessment straight away. If there is a reasonable doubt due to a mental illness or impairment that affects person's capacity, that's the only situation we would consider mental capacity assessment. I hope this clarify.
This did help me. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Also, just to add with what Susan has just said, usually we don't actually, if we know, okay, a person is having an infection, or suffering or going through an infection, we don't actually complete a mental capacity assessment until that infection is cleared. So if somebody has for example, if somebody has a UTI, having antibiotics in place, we don't actually complete that assessment until that particular situation has been resolved.
Yeah, absolutely true. That's why it's time specific. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, is there any other questions that you guys wanted to ask? We could take one more question, perhaps, if there was any. No? All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for attending, and I hope you've taken something positive away from this session as well. Okay, but like I said, if you want the participation of, the certificate for participation, put an email request through, and we will also be sending out the presentation along with that. Okay. All right. Well, have a good rest of the day.
Thank you, Araminda and Martin.
Thank you.
All right.
Have a great day, everybody.
Have a great day. All right.
Have a
Bye-bye.
good weekend. Bye-bye.